Hello, everyone. This is Jacob Hopio, the producer of The Apex. In this episode, Jan and I sit down and discuss tips and tricks on blogging. We go over 3 points from Jan's personal arsenal. 1. Be vulnerable. 2. Trust yourself. 3. The word vomit method. If you want to support us, there are 3 ways to do so. 1 is to donate to our cause at www.patreon.com/theapexpodcast. 2nd, visit our merch line that is proudly partnered with Envision Clothing Company at envisionclothingcompany.com. The other is completely free. All we ask is if you learn something from this episode or know someone that needs to hear our message, share it with them. Please subscribe and hope this pushes you toward your apex.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Apex Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jan Almasi, and seated across the table from me today is our wonderful producer, Mr. Jacob Hopio.
Woo!
So enthusiastic.
I'm hungry.
You're getting hangry?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, buddy. You want to get Chipotle after this?
Yeah, but aren't you going with Bay for lunch?
Yeah, that's true. Bae can come along. Get her Chipotle. Anyway, okay, so today we're just going to do something short. I know we've been doing the podcasting tips and tricks. This will kind of be grouped underneath of that, but I actually want to talk a little bit about blogs right now because I've had a lot of people ask me how I write the blogs and how I come up with that content.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got 3 rules that I'm going to give you today to kind of expedite your process. Okay, so 3 basic tips on the blog writing process. We're just going to go 1, 2, 3. It'll be a nice short episode, but hopefully it'll help you figure things out. So point number 1 is be vulnerable, okay? This is probably the most important one because being vulnerable with yourself and being vulnerable with what you put down on the page, there's a lot of things trapped in your head that you're scared to put down on paper because it makes them real.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the best blogs that I've written to date, and one of the best performing ones, the ones that help the most people, is the Dealing with Anxiety blog. And that one was written, I wrote that in a chapel at like 1 o'clock in the morning, right? Because I was just like tore up about something, and I wrote it in a chapel. But I had to allow myself to be vulnerable enough to put it down on paper. So that's kind of the first step, right? Is allowing yourself to feel emotion and translate that through a pen. Because it can be scary. You know what I mean? It's rough trying to make that transition between it running around in your mind and putting it down on paper.
Well, and you can get caught up in your head and be like, oh, what I have to say is stupid or
Right.
oh, not worth being put down, but you just need to put it down.
Right. Well, that's my second point, right? So being vulnerable is the first one. You have to be able to be vulnerable with yourself, be vulnerable with your emotions. The second one is trusting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the number 1 reason why I get writer's block is because I get caught up in my head and I don't trust myself to be able to translate what I want to say into words that make sense on paper
Mm-hmm.
or into something that people are actually going to want to read.
Right.
Okay. Now, this one kind of has some subcategories. What I'm going to say for this one is in trusting yourself, you have to make sure that you don't give a flying crap about whether and however many people read it. You know what I mean? You can't write something specifically because you're like, oh, if I write this, it'll go viral.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's going to come off fake. You have to trust yourself to be able to put something down on paper and be okay with, I know what I'm talking about. I'm the expert of my life. Nobody else is the expert in your field because it's your life. And trust yourself to put down something that people are going to find worthwhile. But being okay with, if they don't find it worthwhile, you trusted yourself and you start to build that trust with yourself to just put it down on the paper.
Well, it's like musicians. A lot of like popular musicians will think, oh, I just wrote the next hit. And that particular song never turns out to be the hit, but it's some other song that on the album that they didn't really think anything of. And everybody loves that
and everybody
song.
Connects to
it. So it's real. You have to not really make the decision, let others make the decision of value.
Right. So if anybody knows me, they know that I'm a huge fan, I guess. That's not really the word I was looking for, but proponent. I'm a huge proponent of Gary Vee's content.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gary Vaynerchuk, look him up if you don't know who he is yet. But he always talks about trusting yourself as far as like you put out what you want to put out. You need to trust that, you know, the content that you put out, people are going to want to consume, but also you have to reverse engineer what the audience is. You know what I mean? So say you think you wrote the next hit, but then you also, you don't release a song because you think it's crap, because you don't trust yourself.
Yeah.
You don't trust yourself to say that, oh, this is just as high quality as the other ones. You had like 5 people compile to help write one song, and then you wrote a song by yourself, but you don't trust yourself enough to put it out. What if that would have been the hit? You know what I mean? Don't ask yourself, what if it flops, but like, what if that was the key? And that's kind of what I think with the blogs is just like, what if I put this out and nobody reads it? Cool. But what if I put this out and it helps somebody?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where you have to kind of get into in a headspace, I think, is just that trust that regardless of what it is, you know, putting it out there and reverse engineering what your audience needs to hear is kind of that second step.
Yeah.
So first step, be vulnerable with yourself and your emotions. Second step, trust yourself to put things down that are worth value. And third, I'm going to kind of give you a technique to get past writer's block and to really start to put together good ideas for blogs. And this is something that my dad taught me really, really early on. So if you listen to one of our previous episodes, I talk about being raised in Slovakia. You know what I mean? And we talk about kind of European culture and stuff. In that episode, I talked about my mom being raised in Slovakia. Okay. I was homeschooled for the first 13 years of my life. So she taught us everything except for English. We did a lot of vocabulary books. You know, I mispronounced a lot of words as a kid, just because that's where I learned English from. I learned English from somebody that spoke it as a second language. But I learned writing from my dad. Okay, and my dad would always have me write these assignments, and I hated writing. Hated writing when I was a kid. I would cry, throw fits. Everything was horrible because I couldn't get past this writer's block. A, I wasn't being vulnerable. B, I didn't trust myself. But this third point, like I wasn't able to get ideas down on paper. I would just like get a prompt, and then I had no idea what to do with it. Okay, so my dad started having me do something that he calls just the brainstorm method. I like messing with it a little bit, and I call it the word vomit method.
Mm-hmm.
So what it is you get one of those flip notebooks, okay? It can be, you know, a regular composite notebook, but I like using the like the legal pads that flip over the top. And what I do is I have an idea in my mind, right? Or sometimes I'll just take a legal pad and I'll just sit and wait for something to hit me. Or look at the little notes that I have in my phone and wait for something to kind of come. First thing, word vomit onto that first page. Just, I mean, it can look like an unmedicated schizophrenic, like dove into a mountain of cocaine, like was just crazy, hyped out, and it's just unreadable, right? Just compilation of different words. There's symbols. It's just like, you know, the Zodiac killer got a hold of a legal pad and is now it's in code, but your brain can interpret it. You know what I mean? Because you're just writing down ideas. Take a step away. So now you have this word vomit down on this legal pad. Take a step away, 10 minutes. Go get a glass of water, go to the bathroom, get something to eat. Come back, look at it, circle 5 to 10 points. Okay? 5 to 10 words, symbols, emotions, adjectives, whatever. Flip over to the next page, list them 1 through 10 in the top left corner. Okay? Draw a line, and underneath of that, pick, you know, start crossing some of them off that you don't think. Cross off at least 5. If you have 10, you want to eliminate about half of them. Okay? Take each one of those. Now that you have half of them eliminated, just write a sentence. Doesn't need to be crazy. Sentence, 2 sentences, maybe tops. You're not writing paragraphs, just a little bit. Take another step away. Come back, circle 3 of them, and now you have 3 things that you could probably write an entire blog post on. Okay? Because you've narrowed it down from the raw information that your brain has flooding around like crazy in there down to something that is actually purposeful, that you feel connected to, you know, that you can actually probably write something on. So you've redeveloped your prompt.
Distill it down.
You distill it down into a nice, beautiful shot of moonshine. Right.
Slivovitz.
Slivovitz.
Yeah.
Yep. And so now, if you followed the first two steps and you were vulnerable and you trust yourself, you now have 3. What are you smirking about? You now have 3.
I don't know.
Is it just your face?
Yeah.
You now have 3 different prompts that you can turn into blog posts.
I'm sorry.
Oh, man. You're worse than RJ.
Yeah.
RJ at least says something to get me off track. It's just your face makes me dive down rabbit holes.
I was just smiling. I was like, There's 1, 2 word vomits on page.
Interesting. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. All right, so that's just some quick tips. I know that there's some people asking me about it, so that's kind of my process, just so I can give it to you. First step, be vulnerable. Second step, trust yourself. Third step is the word vomit method. First page, idea vomit, flip, list 5 to 10 ideas in the upper left-hand corner, draw a line, narrow those 5 to 10 ideas down, just write 1 sentence about them, flip it again. Now you have prompts and you can start developing after that. If anybody has any questions about blogging or anything like that, or podcasting, how we come up with stuff, feel free to shoot us an email. You can shoot me a DM on Instagram at Jan_Almasy.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure that process can be applicable to anything.
Oh, yeah.
Like just brainstorming ideas.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I use it all the time. I use it in nursing. I use it with writing. It's applicable in a lot of different places.
I just sit in silence, and then I'm like, oh, okay.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Mm-hmm.
Wait for something to smack you in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do that. But, all right, guys. So if you want to support the podcast, go to www.patreon.com/The Apex Podcast. For as little as $1 a month, you can join the family of Apex Chasers on Patreon and have access to the Patreon content. For $5 a month, you get a sticker in the mail, a handwritten letter, a shout-out on the show, and the knowledge you're supporting our content, which is the most important piece.
Mm-hmm.
You're helping us help you, help others. With that, we'll catch you next time. Keep chasing that apex.